he will be available tonight on ESPN2 for you guys to watch and listen to. He's available now here on the Sports Bash. The GM mock of the first round is available now at ESPN Plus. The Sports Center special tonight, mock draft. Mike Tannenbaum's mock draft will air at 7 o'clock on ESPN2, and he will be a part of ESPN Radio's coverage of the NFL draft. Now, his mock draft on ESPN Plus is what he would do, not what he thinks will happen. It's what he would do if he was picking for that team. I want to be clear. Mike Tannenbaum, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing well. How's everything?
Everything's good. It's good to have you on, and I wanted to stress this is what you would do if you were in the GM seat for these teams, because I think Eagles fans are probably smiling right now if they checked out your mock draft at number 12 and saw Kyle Pitts landing there. That would be a home run, would it not?
Yeah. University of Florida's Kyle Pitts being drafted by University of Florida's Howie Roseman. Great Gator connection for the Philadelphia Eagles.
That would be nice. Now, Roseman, as you probably are aware, pretty polarizing figure here in this area. Not the most liked guy at times. Pulls off a lot of trades. It turns people one way. The draft has not been the strongest suit for the Philadelphia Eagles. But if he was able to get Pitts at number 12, that's a pretty much home run decision. Is that a pick? How possible do you see that player, Pitts, falling to number 12?
I don't know if it's that likely, but you never know. I've drafted players where they felt us that we didn't have them, going to where, we thought they were. And I'm sure they'll be prepared, and I'm sure they would do backflips if, that ever came to pass.
Give us your take on what happened yesterday with the Sam Darnold trade and maybe how that could affect everybody after the Jets. Now, specifically, I guess everything kind of starts up around that 4 spot with speculation.
Yeah, I think for the Jets, obviously they go Zach Wilson, and I think for Carolina, you can't rule out a quarterback because if let's say Justin Fields falls to them, which is what I have in my mock, then you can turn a weakness to a strength overnight. And Sam Darnold only has one more year to go on his contract, and I just think it's a way to fortify a position with 2 good young players. So, we'll see what happens. And but I do think, Fields in Carolina can't be ruled out.
Mike Tannenbaum, check out his GM mock draft now at ESPN Plus. Trey Lance, you have going 4. So you're saying if you were the GM of the Falcons, that's the direction you would go. You would not turn the page on Ryan. He's got years left, but you would at least draft his successor. But do you think the Falcons really hold the key to this draft? There's a report today that they're taking calls on that pick.
Yeah, I think the draft starts in Atlanta. I think obviously San Francisco is going to take a quarterback. I believe it's going to be Mac Jones from Alabama, and I think that's why Atlanta is the most interesting inflection point at this time.
All right. Obviously, I'd like to pick your brain on this a little bit. You've obviously been there on draft day. Everybody always wants to know, and I'm sure it's different with each team, but as the GM of a franchise on draft day, when you are the guy making these picks, how many people are involved typically when that decision comes up? When you go on the clock, the New York Jets are on the clock, how many people are talking to Mike Tannenbaum in that 15 minutes? Or are you kind of like, hey, we've done all the preparation. It's now my time to figure out which guy we're going to go with?
Yeah, that circle to me has to be pretty small because the hay's in the barn. You want everybody to have a say in a meaningful way. And then when it's time to go, you have 1 or 2 people. You're listening for, a trade. You're checking your medical security. But that circle is just maybe a handful of people.
Now, the draft coming up here, obviously, Howie Roseman made that trade. I'd like to get your reaction as a GM when you saw that trade made. If you're Philadelphia sitting at 6 with all the holes they have, you get that phone call from Miami. Did you like the result if you're on the Philadelphia Eagles side, moving from 6 to 12 and adding a first-round pick in next year's draft?
Yeah, and I can't imagine anybody that doesn't from the Eagles standpoint. I mean, think about this. Let's put this into context. Last year, Buffalo gave up a first-round pick to Minnesota for arguably one of the best receivers in all of football, and Stephon Diggs. To go back 6 spots, the Eagles got 2 ones. I mean, that's insanely productive for them just from a standpoint of if Miami had taken those 2 first-round picks and said, hey, let's go get DK Metcalf, hey, let's go get Michael Thomas, those 2 ones may have yielded that sort of player. So for a team that has a number of holes that they're trying to fill, I thought Philly did a really good job with that trade.
Yeah.
They are not one player away.
I agree with that. Let me get your, when you see what San Francisco does, now you have them taking Matt Jones, as many people do, and you're saying that you would do the same thing, essentially, if you were in that seat. Do you like these teams that are trading multiple picks for guys who have no resumes?
No, I think they're trading a ton. But I'm answering the question that if San Francisco's sitting in that seat on draft day, what would I do? And for months, I've compared Mac Jones to Matt Ryan. And if you think about like the success that Kyle Shanahan had with Matt Ryan in Atlanta, I think it's a really good fit. And I think Mac Jones's athleticism is somewhat underrated.
Right, so you're saying you wouldn't have made the trade to get up to number 3, but once you were in the number 3 spot, that's who you would take.
Correct. That's exactly right.
All right. So how about with what the Jets did yesterday? This is always so weird. Like, these teams are so willing to turn the page just 3 years in. I know you're connected to that team. You were there, obviously, but you have Darnold, and they've already made a decision on him. It feels like these teams go through this routine almost every 3 years. You have a new coaching staff in there. Did you like what they got in return to move the number 3 pick of the draft from just 3 years ago?
I think it was a situation where there were a lot of options filled up quickly, and that's what happens. San Francisco was looking, Chicago signed Andy Dalton, even Houston signed Tyrod Taylor. So they were running out of options. So I think from a value standpoint, I think they did well. I don't think they crushed it because they just were running out of options. And, it was clear that, hey, we're going to go with Zach Wilson and let's just get, the most value we possibly can.
Mike Tannenbaum, ESPN2 tonight. Mike Tannenbaum's GM mock draft. You can watch that. He'll be a part of ESPN Radio's coverage. Just a couple more with you, Mike, before we let you roll here. When you know there is a class of receivers, like specifically in this one, how much does that enter your mind? Do you know that next year might not have the same group of guys and say, hey, if we really want a receiver, this is the year to get one? Is that a way that an organization would think in a draft, knowing how much talent is in this specific class and maybe saying, next year is not the time to get one, so let's get one now, even if maybe we don't need one?
Yeah, and also it helps break ties within a draft. So this draft is loaded with receivers, and I think there's guys going to be like Kadarius Toney from Florida available in the second round. And because of that, if you're in the first round, I think there'll be less first rounders going this year than people realize. And it's really because there's such great depth, and you have to think strategically just to maximize your opportunities.
Yeah, I know the wide receivers, a lot of Eagle fans want to see a wide receiver. How would you describe Kyle Pitts? Listed as a tight end, but when you take a look at this guy's film, if you're the GM and your scouts are coming to you and they tell you about Kyle Pitts, what are they telling you?
He's a weapon. He has incredible wingspan. He's a great athlete. He's long. He can run. He can high point the ball. He's rare, and he'll be a historically tough mismatch at the next level.
Mike Tannenbaum, don't forget to check out him tonight on television's Mike Tannenbaum's mock draft special will air at 7 o'clock. The mock draft is up, so you can check out your favorite team over at ESPN+. He'll be a part of ESPN Radio's coverage of the NFL draft here on 97.3 ESPN. So with the 12th pick, Mike Tannenbaum would take Kyle Pitts if he were sitting in that chair. That means he would have passed on him 11 times with the other teams, but we would be thrilled to have him in Philadelphia, just like we were thrilled to have Mike here on the Sports Bash. Mike, we appreciate your time, man.
Okay, thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. It was awesome to hear from a GM's perspective, especially that part where he says it could really break the tie, knowing that, hey, there's a lot of good receivers in this class. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. Mike Tannenbaum, our guest, and he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline.